All right, let's get into it. Today we're talking about something absolutely essential, the fuel delivery system. Think of it as the lifeblood of your engine. And honestly, understanding how these pumps, lines, and filters all work together, that's your key to cracking some of the most annoying performance issues you'll ever run into.
You know, the easiest way to wrap your head around this whole system is to think about it like the human body. Seriously, the fuel pump, that's the heart, pumping away. The fuel lines are the arteries and veins, carrying that fuel exactly where it needs to be. And the fuel filter, well, that's your kidney, right? It's constantly cleaning out all the gunk to keep the whole system running smoothly.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to follow the fuel's journey from start to finish. Then we'll zoom in on the heart of it all, the pump. After that, it's time to put on our detective hats and learn how to diagnose problems like a seasoned pro. And we'll wrap up with what is, without a doubt, the most important part, doing all of this safely.
All right, Section 1, the fuel's journey. We're going to trace the path of the fuel right from the tank, through the lines, and past the filter.
So it all kicks off in the fuel tank, right? That's the main reservoir. Inside, you've got a pickup tube, which has this little filter sock on the end that sucks the fuel up. From there, it travels through the fuel lines, those arteries we talked about, and heads straight for the fuel filter. Its job is to catch all those tiny particles, like we're talking down to 10 or 20 microns. Oh, and you can't forget the vent system, super important. Without it, you'd create a vacuum as the fuel gets used, and that would literally stop the fuel from flowing at all. Now, this is super important. You have to understand that not all fuel lines are the same, not even close. You've got your low-pressure lines, for older carburetor systems or return lines, but then you've got high-pressure lines for modern fuel injection. We're talking serious pressure here. And look, here's the deal. If you slap a cheap spring-type clamp on a high-pressure system, it's not going to hold. No way. That's how you get a high-pressure fuel leak, and that's a massive fire hazard. So the bottom line is, you absolutely have to use the right lines and clamps for the job. No exceptions.
Okay, let's get to the heart of the system. We've talked about the passive parts. Now it's time for the active one, the electric fuel pump.
So what exactly is an electric fuel pump? Well, it's what's known as a positive displacement pump. Basically, it pushes a very specific amount of fuel with every single rotation. But the real genius here is where they put it. It's almost always located inside the fuel tank itself. Why? Two brilliant reasons. First, being submerged in all that cool gasoline keeps the electric motor from overheating. And second, and this is the big one, it prevents any tiny sparks from the motor from ever reaching the explosive fuel vapor. It's a design that's both clever and incredibly safe. So you're mainly going to see two types of pumps out there. On the left, you've got the older roller cell design. It uses these little rollers to squeeze the fuel and build pressure. On the right is the turbine pump, which is what you'll find in most modern cars. It's more like a jet engine with a little impeller. And the difference is huge. The turbine is way quieter and more efficient. You know that high-pitched whining sound you sometimes hear from older cars when you turn the key? Yep, that's almost always a roller cell pump doing its thing.
And speaking of safety, we have to talk about the inertia switch. This little device has one absolutely critical job. If the car gets into a collision, it instantly cuts all power to the fuel pump. Think about it. The last thing you want in an accident is the fuel pump just continuing to spray gasoline all over a hot, damaged engine bay. This switch is a literal lifesaver. And a little tip, if a car won't start after a sharp bump or a minor fender bender, this is one of the first things you should check. Often there's a little reset button on it. All right, so we know how it's supposed to work, but what about when things go wrong? This is where the real fun begins. Let's get into how you diagnose these problems like a pro. It really boils down to three key tests: pressure, volume, and current. So, you've got a car that won't start. Or maybe it starts, but it hesitates and sputters when you try to accelerate. All the classic signs are pointing to a fuel problem. But how do you know for sure if the pump is the culprit? Where do you even begin? Believe it or not, the very first test costs nothing and takes about 5 seconds. It's the ear test. Just turn the key to the on position. Don't try to start it, just turn it to on. For about 2 seconds, you should hear a faint whirring or buzzing sound coming from the back of the car, near the fuel tank. That's the pump priming the system. If you hear that sound, you know the pump is at least getting power. If you hear nothing, well, you've probably got an electrical issue to chase down first.
Okay, here's a classic pro tip, an old school trick that still works wonders. If you do the ear test and you hear absolutely nothing, try giving the bottom of the fuel tank a good firm whack with a rubber mallet while someone else turns the key. I'm serious. Sometimes a dying pump just gets stuck, and that little jolt is enough to get it to spin one more time. Now let's be crystal clear, this is not a repair, it's a diagnosis. If the car starts after you do that, you've just confirmed you need a new fuel pump, period.
Now, to get a real hard number, you need to do a fuel pressure test. And step one is always safety. You've got to relieve the pressure in the system before you disconnect anything. Once it's safe, you just hook up your fuel pressure gauge to the Schrader valve on the fuel rail. Then have someone turn the key to on to run the pump, and you'll get a reading. But remember, that number means nothing on its own. You have to compare it to the manufacturer's specifications for that exact vehicle.
And this is exactly why you need the specs. Just look at this chart. An older throttle body injection system might be perfectly happy with, say, 10 or 12 psi. But if you saw that same pressure on a modern port fuel injection engine, you'd know immediately that the system has failed completely, because it's looking for something more like 40 psi. Context is everything here. Now, here's a huge trap that even experienced techs can fall into. Pressure is only half the story. You might hook up a gauge and see perfect pressure at idle, but the car still has no power on the road. What gives? It's all about volume. A weak pump or a clogged filter might be able to build up pressure when there's no demand, but it can't deliver the flow, the sheer volume of fuel that the engine needs when you put your foot down. That's why you get that classic symptom. Car runs fine around town, but it falls on its face when you try to merge onto the highway.
Want to take your diagnostics to the next level? You've got to do a current draw test. Think of amperage as a measure of how hard the pump's electric motor is working. It tells you a ton. If the amps are too high, that motor is struggling. It's likely pushing against a restriction, like a clogged fuel filter. But if the amps are too low, well, that could mean the motor itself is worn out, or there's a bad electrical connection somewhere, like a corroded ground, that's starving it for power.
Okay, let's bring it home with our final section, and honestly, it's the most important one. Maintenance and safety. So, when it's time to do the job, you have to do it right. Don't even think about putting in a new pump without replacing that little strainer sock on the bottom. Why? Because whatever dirt and gunk killed the old pump will just kill the new one. You also really need to clean out the inside of the fuel tank while you're in there. And of course, the best repair is the one you never have to do, so stay on top of your maintenance. Changing that inline fuel filter every 30,000 to 60,000 miles can save you a world of hurt down the road.
And now we need to get serious for a moment. I absolutely cannot stress this enough. Gasoline vapor is highly flammable and explosive. And listen, it's not so much the liquid gasoline you need to worry about. It's the invisible fumes. They are heavier than air, they will sink to the lowest point, and they can travel across a garage floor looking for a pilot light or a stray spark. So these rules right here, they are not optional. They are non-negotiable. You must disconnect the battery's negative terminal. You must work in a well-ventilated area. Outside is best if you can. Absolutely no sparks, no open flames, no smoking. Period. Have a Class B fire extinguisher right there with you. Wear your safety glasses and fuel-resistant gloves. And as we said before, always relieve the fuel pressure before cracking a line open. And finally, when you're done, that old filter is hazardous waste. You have to dispose of it properly. Don't mess around with this stuff.
So, at the end of the day, it really comes down to this simple question. What would you rather deal with? A little bit of preventative maintenance now, or a tow truck on the side of the road later? The choice is pretty clear, isn't it?